Even the closest families have disagreements, shocker, especially when everyone's home for the holidays, everyone's in that one room, that one home. Like when the in-laws maybe ignore your request to not fill up your kids with sweets, or maybe your grown kids make themselves a little too comfortable when they visit. My next guest has strategies for anyone hosting adult children during the holidays. Studio 5 parenting contributor Heather Johnson is doing a little family therapy for all of us, offering strategies for common holiday conflicts that can come up. But here's the first conflict, and I know it's happening in the inner part of the heart of every mom and grandma out there. They love when the kids come home.
Absolutely.
They love it. Who doesn't love when the family gets together? And there's a but.
There is, and this is stressful, and we should probably preface this whole thing like, take the boxing gloves, put them away. Like we gotta, because we're gonna kind of shoot pretty straight here, right? Because overarching all of this, two really key things. Before we get into family dynamics, anything, first, when we get together with our family, we can't lose sight of our goals. My goal when I take my family to visit my parents is not to fight, is not to have arguments, is not to be stressed or offended. My goal is for our relationship to get stronger. So if I can keep that goal in mind, it will help me to take a high road, to not take offense, to be more able to communicate, to do those good things. So we got to decide, what's the goal? Why are we hanging out together?
And keep that goal front and center.
It's exactly right. Oh, because we love each other and because we want to build that love and that relationship.
Right.
The other thing, again, before we get into specifics, is whenever things do get tense or tight, one of the great ways to work around it or right through it is to serve. Go right at service. So when you do feel those tensions running high, when the house is kept at 84 and you feel like you're going to die of sweat because that's just how your extended family likes their home, right? And you're at your wit's end, do something to serve
That might
them.
be a good time to go shovel the driveway.
It's exactly right. Hope for snow, right? Hope it is not in a warm place. Or I know my husband just not too long ago, I found him fixing toilet paper holders in an extended family's, in their 3 bathrooms. And I said, what are you doing? And he said, well, I'm banking on service to get me through this,
Get
right?
me through this
and
event.
so we went from there to sprinkler. Just serve. Find a way to offer something up when it gets stressful.
I love that. When stress comes, serve.
Serve.
We do have some specific scenarios. We'll run through 3, in fact, and you're going to offer. We've challenged Heather just to shoot it straight.
We're going to do it.
We're just going to say it how it is. So our first scenario is your grown child with kids comes home for the holiday to grandma and grandpa's house. Grandparents versus the kids with kids. What are some pitfalls to watch out for?
Okay, so first of all, you've got to remember, so this would be like my husband and I and our kids going to visit my parents, for example. We have to remember that when we go visit like this, our parents have most likely been living without kids under their feet every day for a number of years. And so their home is a certain way and things are a certain way. And it's not that they're not excited for us to be there, but they do live in a way that is much less chaotic than we probably do.
Right, right.
So we've got to be open to the fact that we are introducing some of that chaos that isn't in their programming for their everyday life anymore. It was, it's not so much. So the first thing my husband and I have to realize is this is not a vacation for us. This idea that we're going to show up at extended family's house or grandparents' house and drop our kids off while we watch TV, go on dates, never cook a meal, don't do laundry, and our parents take care of our kids is pretty unfortunate. That is not what they hoped for on Christmas vacation.
Got it.
So we got to avoid that, right? It's not a vacation. For parents, it's really great, or grandparents, to set some boundaries, to create some boundaries that help them feel like they have some control over their life.
In advance?
In advance, on the spot, however it works, right? But yes, in advance is really powerful. Now, here's the thing quickly about boundaries. We think about boundaries as what someone else will stop doing. That is not a boundary, right? Because I can't control someone else. A boundary is what I'm going to do if they do something or if you do something. Now that gives the control back to me. So maybe it's, if the house gets really loud, I'm going to go for a walk. Why? Because somehow I've got to get some control back. And chaos has erupted in a home. I'm not used to it, so I'm going to go take a walk.
But see, important twist, it's not I'm going to make everyone be quiet.
No, it's not, because I can't control everyone. And remember, boundaries are to offer control back to us. So if you are the one hosting, and this applies to anyone, it's also a really great parenting, right, advice right here, is be sure that the boundaries are what I will do if you do something.
All right. Our next scenario, grown kids and divorced parents. Some new dynamics here that are really tricky.
For sure, and this is tricky. And so, suggestion on both sides. First of all, if you are the child of divorced parents, you're now grown, right? You're going into this situation where you're trying to figure out how to juggle a mom and a dad who aren't in the same space. And they tend to overcommit. They tend to try to make it... The
kids do?
Yes, to try to make it more traditional, right? I've got to get to both their homes and do both things with both parents all the time. Don't overcommit. It's okay. Spend Thanksgiving with your dad and spend Christmas with your mom. or spend Christmas with your dad and 4th of July with your mom.
But be realistic
But
about
be
the
very
commitments you're
realistic,
making.
right? Because remember, you most likely have your own children now that you are running through what becomes very emotional as you try to commit to too many things. Now, if you're on the flip side, if you are the parent who is divorced, it's really important that you are open to the fact that there is another parent that your child loves. And just because they're adults, they still have those same ties and desires to have memories to spend time with and to speak of. And so this idea that, you know, if you're the mother and you're divorced, that you can't speak about your dad is unfortunate. It's not fair to them. They want to be able to have both of you in their lives, and that means there needs to be discussion surrounding both of you, and we need to be humble about that.
I have friends in this situation. I must say they handle it beautifully, but I look in on that with such sympathy sounds strong. Admiration, thank you. Admiration and respect for how they handle it, because it is so challenging. You love both parties. You want to meet those expectations, especially during the holiday season when it's supposed to be special and magical, and it's tricky.
And it's
tricky.
hard. And you have memories tied to both, right? As a child before whatever happened kind of happened.
Right.
And so it's very hard to dismiss the importance and power and impact of those memories and dismiss your parent. You would never want to do that.
Right.
So you have to juggle it.
All right, scenario number 3, sibling with family, bringing their family to another sibling's house. So we've got...
So that would be, let's see, so my husband and I and our kids going to visit my brother and his family.
Yes,
that's what we're
lots of
talking
kids,
about.
2 different families under one roof. Let's identify some potential problems.
Sure. So biggest problem here is my husband and I, with a grown family in a sense, have a certain way of celebrating this time of year. Well, so does my brother and his family. And now we're going to have to figure out how to do it in the same space on the same day at the same time. And that gets kind of tricky, right? So, for example, maybe he is a firm believer that live trees are the only way to go. Well, my husband and I are huge proponents of fake trees where lights are already on them, and I don't have to do it every year, right?
I meet you there.
And there is no tree that is half fake and half real. If you can create it, by all means,
let Heather know.
Let me know. I will be the first to back that. And so we have to find this space where first, if we're the ones traveling, for example, if my husband and I are going to my brother's home, we've got to leave our expectations at home. We really do. It is not my brother's responsibility with his family to recreate our Christmas or our holiday season, but in his home. That's not his responsibility.
It's not fair.
It isn't. And so I've got to leave those expectations at home. Now, if we're using this scenario on my brother's end, he and his family, they've got to relinquish some control. Right? Because there are different ways of doing things and different thought patterns. And so if he can give up a little control while I leave my expectations behind, we can find a middle ground. Now, what might this sound like? How cool would it be if my brother called and said, hey, listen, what are some of your very favorite things that your family does at Christmas? Let's make them work here.
Love it.
Right?
Love it.
And even more important, what if the two of us discussed beforehand and we said, you know what, forget what you do and what I do. Let's create what we do. When we spend this season together, what do we do? And the great thing about that is, in 5 years, when we do it again, we now have our own memories and traditions that we duplicate every 5 years when we spend that time together.
You realize in all of these scenarios, it takes a disciplined, selfless approach.
Absolutely. And selflessness, and that's where we go back to our goals. Don't lose sight of that. The goal is to build. The goal is to strengthen. The goal is to increase the love between you. So focus on that.
And at the end of the day, if this doesn't work, Heather has a private practice. You can call her in January.
Call me. We'll work through it, because we don't want next Christmas to be tainted by this Christmas if it goes sour.
This will be really helpful. I'm glad we had this conversation in advance. Heather, Merry Christmas. Thank you so much.